welcome to Today in Black History. And each week I talk about a Black American achievement or a historical event. And today I'm going to talk about Thurgood Marshall achievements. Today, August 11th, 1965, he became the U.S. Solicitor General. So I'm going to talk about his career, his achievements, and also some of the work that he had done in Florida. So let's get started. Thurgood Marshall was born in Baltimore, Maryland on July 2nd, 1908. His given name was Thorogood, but he shortened it to Thurgood as a child. After he completed high school in 1925, he went to Lincoln University, and then he studied at Howard University School of Law. He began practicing law in Baltimore in 1933. In 1935, his first major court victory came in Murray versus Pearson, when he, alongside his mentor Charles Hamilton Houston, successfully sued the University of Maryland for denying a Black applicant to its law school because of his race. And this was a major victory for him, for Thurgood Marshall, because in 1930, when he was applying to law schools, University of Maryland denied or rejected his application because he was Black. So this was a big victory for him with one of his cases. Shortly after this legal success, he became a staff lawyer for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and was eventually named chief of the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. He coordinated the organization's lawsuits challenging segregation in housing and education. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, he was recognized as one of the top attorneys in the United States, winning 29 of the 32 cases he argued before the Supreme Court. Good morning, lifestyle. What is that? Good morning, life is life. All right, so we're talking about Thurgood Marshall. So some of his cases, notable cases, is one in particular that happened here in Florida, in Pompano Beach. This was Chambers versus Florida, and this case this was in 1940, and this is a case that he argued before the Supreme Court. So Thurgood Marshall successfully defended 4 convicted African American men who were coerced by police into confessing to murder. The Supreme Court of the United States held that the practices that led to the defendants' confessions were unconstitutional. For 5 days, they were mistreated, physically threatened, and subjected to interrogations, culminating in an all-night examination without formal charges being brought and without the ability to see family, a friend, or an attorney. The court found that the circumstances of the confessions violated the due process requirement of the 14th Amendment. four four black men convicted of the murder of a white man in Pompano Beach. So with this case, I don't know if any of you are familiar with this case. Most of us was not around during this time. This happened in the late 1930s, and the case went to the Supreme Court. Thurgood Marshall argued this case in the Supreme Court in 1940, but this is in Pompano Beach, which is like 30 miles north of Miami. And these four black men were actually, what happened was there was a white guy who was murdered in Pompano Beach, and there was outrage. There was rioting by white people, and so the police were challenged or forced, had a lot of pressure to arrest, to convict someone. So they started gathering. They were saying they had arrested like up to 40 black men, just grabbing black men throughout the community and arresting them and interrogating them. And they split them up between, they sent a few to Fort Lauderdale, Broward County Jail, and then they sent a few to Miami-Dade County Jail to question them. And then they narrowed it down to 4 men who eventually confessed to the murder because they were being threatened and interrogated, and they did this for a period of 7 days. And I'm just going to read briefly what they experienced based on what it said in the court documents. So it said that they were carried singly from each of their cells and subjected to questioning. Each found himself a single prisoner, surrounded in a 4th floor jail room by 4 to 10 men. The county sheriff, his deputies, a guard, and other white officers and citizens of the community. So they were being questioned all throughout the night by 5 to 10 police officers. And so I think, I have the names of the 4 men who were convicted. So it was Charlie Davis, Jack Williamson, Isaiah Chambers, and Walter Woodward. And I believe Walter Woodward was the first to confess to the crime, and then the other 3 followed. So Thurgood Marshall won his case, and he won it based that they were all of these men were convicted of a crime, but they did not go through the due process law that is required by the 14th Amendment, that all citizens must go through the due process. And so that was one of the cases that Thurgood Marshall won here in South Florida. Also, in the 1940s and 50s, Thurgood Marshall helped Garth Reeves, who was the owner of Miami Times, and other activists with their 7-year legal battle to expand golf course access. And during that time, Black people in Miami-Dade County were restricted to playing only on Mondays, when they faced sprinkler-soaked fairways, so the grass was wet. And I have a photograph of one of their meetings. I'm pretty sure, because this was a 7-year. And let's see if you can see that. So you have what you can see here. This is Thurgood Marshall here. This is Garth Reeves Sr. here, and that's S.H. Johnson, who is Dr. S.H. Johnson, who is a radiologist, and I believe this is his office. And then you have L.E. Graves, Judge L.E. Graves right here. So this was a meeting discussing how they can get expand their access to the golf courses in Miami. So this is a photograph courtesy of the Black Archives. Also, Thurgood Marshall's time here, he did spend time at the popular Mary Elizabeth Hotel in Overtown, which was a hotel favorite retreat for many dignitaries. Also, moving on, this is not in Florida, but another case that Thurgood Marshall won in the Supreme Court. And when I say the Supreme Court, this is him as a practicing attorney, not him as being a judge, but a practicing attorney. In this decision, Smith versus Allwright, the Supreme Court overturned a Texas state law that authorized the use of whites-only primary elections in certain southern states. Another case that he won was Shelley versus Kramer, where the Supreme Court struck down the legalities of racially restricting housing covenants. Thurgood Marshall was the primary strategist of the series of cases that ended with the Supreme Court's 1954 decision in the case of Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka that segregation in public schools is unconstitutional, and that case is the case that he's most known for, which is the Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. President John F. Kennedy appointed him to the U.S. Court of Appeals in New York in 1961. He served until 1965 when President Johnson named him the Solicitor General of the United States. And so, and that's what we're celebrating his achievement for today. That was August 11, 1965. And he was the first U.S. Solicitor General. And the task of the officer of the Solicitor General is to supervise and conduct government litigation in the United States Supreme Court. Thurgood Marshall won 14 of the 19 cases he argued before the Supreme Court on behalf of the government. In 1967, President Johnson appointed him to be the first African American justice to the U.S. Supreme Court, proclaiming it was the right thing to do, the right time to do it, and the right man and the right place. So in 1967, that's when he is appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court, where most of us know him for. Throughout his historic tenure as justice, Thurgood Marshall developed a reputation as a passionate member of the court who supported expanding civil rights, enacting affirmative action laws, and limiting criminal punishment. As a justice, he wrote a number of important decisions on freedom of expression and on equal protection, urging the court to safeguard the rights of minorities and the poor. As conservative judges became the majority on the court, he often expressed his dissenting views in eloquent written opinions. In 1991, he retired from the Supreme Court because of his declining health. President George H.W. Bush appointed his replacement. And who could tell me who was Thurgood Marshall's replacement in 1991? Who did George Bush replace Justice Thurgood Marshall? And I'll just give you a minute to put that in there, but I'll keep reading on. Thurgood Marshall died on January 24th, 1993. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. And I just wanted to read some of his best known quotes. For those of you who just joined, I'm talking about Thurgood Marshall. Today is a day that he was he became the U.S. Solicitor General in 1965. So some of his best known quotes include, you do what you think is right and let the law catch up. Racism separates, but it never liberates. Hatred generates fear, and fear, once given a foothold, binds, consumes, and imprisons. Nothing is gained from prejudice. No one benefits from racism. And the last one is, the measure of a country's greatness is its ability to retain compassion in times of crisis. Yes, so thank you for that, Lewis and Jocelyn. It was Clarence Thomas who replaced Thurgood Marshall when he retired from the Supreme Court. That is correct. Also, as a tribute to the judge, the Law School of Texas Southern University renamed their law school to the Thurgood Marshall School of Law in 1978, and it continues to educate and train law students. Also, you have the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which was established in 1987, which supports nearly 300,000 students who attend schools at historically Black colleges, universities, medical schools, and law schools. So that concludes my information on Thurgood Marshall, and you can find more information about him at the Thurgood Marshall at thurgoodmarshall.com, justice.gov, which is the U.S. Department of Justice, worldbookonline.com, and history.com. So that is Thurgood Marshall. Today we celebrate him becoming the U.S. Solicitor General, the first Black U.S. Solicitor General, and then he went to his next big achievement of becoming the first Black U.S. Supreme Court Justice. So thank you for watching. Tomorrow we will have Jeopardy Noir at 2 p.m. And thanks for being here. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.